The Boston Bruins eked out enough offense to get a home opening win over the Montreal Canadiens, but they still displayed some bad habits that they need to fix moving forward.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans? Happy Friday, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is the daily show where we discuss all things Spoked Beat. Today is October 11th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started with the storylines, stats, and signals from a home opening win over the Montreal Canadiens, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. Now, a couple big storylines from last night's game, a win over the Montreal Canadiens. The first was the season debut of Jeremy Swayman, who, wasn't perfect on the night, but did enough to get the Boston Bruins the win in the opening game. And afterwards, he was quite reflective. He had hopped on the plane with his teammates to Florida very soon after signing the 8-year, $66 million extension. Hasn't had a lot of practices under his belt before making his season debut. We'll touch on the turnovers and defensive miscues in front of him. He didn't face a ton of traffic last night. And aside from one exchange with Nick Suzuki, he didn't have a lot of action in the crease, but he was very appreciative of the applause he received during the home opener player introductions all the way to the final whistle, cherishing every moment, he said, and feeling at home and settled. You never know how fans are going to react after a somewhat contentious contract negotiation, and near the end of it, some fans certainly were turning on him, but he said, such an incredible thing to be back playing in TD Garden again. Boatloads of gratitude, just knowing how much time he spent at the rink trying to stay sharp. Couldn't be happier to be back in the rhythm of things. Now, Swayman did allow 4 goals on 24 shots for an .833 save percentage. That number obviously is going to rise, but the big key was, of course, the victory that was fueled by some unlikely offensive contributions. Even yesterday, I was saying, I wasn't super enthused about having guys like Riley Tufte, Cole Koepke in the lineup, but Koepke in particular really blew me away last night with his performance. He saw only 13 shifts, 7 minutes and 20 seconds of ice time, and he managed a goal and 2 assists for a team high 3 points, tied with Elias Lindholm for the team lead in points last night. Lindholm, of course, was signed to be a number 1 center for this team, and he displayed that acumen last night. That's not something you expect from Cole Koepke, especially in only 7 minutes and 20 seconds of ice time, a team low. They also got 2 goals from Mark Kastelic, one that was very important as the Canadiens had made it 5-4 at one point. Kastelic, it wasn't the prettiest play, maybe not even intentional, but you just trying to get it centered over to Johnny Beecher, and the puck went in the net past Caden Primo, and that was a huge, huge goal. In fact, that whole line, Beecher chipped in an assist as well. Beecher, Kastelic, and Koepke combining for 6 points in this one, which is huge to get that from your fourth line. And that was incredibly important because the other end of ice, the Bruins defense still struggling a little bit. Team defense is supposed to be a strength of this team, but there were some definite miscues, turnovers that led directly to some Canadiens goals. Nikita Zadorov, who did chip in offensively in this one, getting a couple of assists. We'll talk about that more in the stats section. He said he thought the team was pretty good offensively. They were hard on the forecheck, stripped a lot of pucks, stayed hard on Montreal's D, especially since the Canadiens were on the second of a back-to-back. But defensively, there's a lot of room to improve. But Zadorov added he thinks they're going to be fine. They've got a new group out there to tweak the system a little bit, and they'll get used to it. Now, Parker Witherspoon was in the lineup in favor of Mason Lohrei. You got to remember, Andrew Peeke is still relatively new. Zadorov's trying to get acclimated to the system. McAvoy, Carlo, Lindholm are your core guys there. Witherspoon even didn't play a ton last season, so he's still trying to get acclimated, and, it was his first regular season game action this season. But the Bruins, they're big, they're strong, but not necessarily the speediest bunch, and could get burned in that regard defensively by a team like the Canadiens that has some little whippersnappers out there like Cole Caulfield, Suzuki, Brendan Gallagher, Lindholm as well. That would be the forward. Lindholm added defensively. They can certainly use some improvement, but overall it was a decent game from the Bruins side. And I guess that's pretty much how you can sum it up. It was a decent game for the Bruins. Offensively, they got enough. Montreal, an improved team, but certainly still a team that is building. The Bruins, you could say their window still remains open, although perhaps it's closing a little bit, depending on who you ask. To lose to the defending Stanley Cup champions, you can kind of excuse, especially on a night when they were raising their banner. But the Bruins really needed to come out with a stronger effort against the Canadiens. They did that offensively, to be sure, but there's still some tightening up to be done defensively. We'll discuss some more storylines and signals that we can take away from last night's game here as the podcast continues. If you're looking to hire, there's no better place to turn than Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster either. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Boston Bruins. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply, but if you need to hire, you most certainly need Indeed. Thank you so much once again, friends, for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And let's discuss some of the key stats from last night's game against the Montreal Canadiens. I mentioned 3 points for Cole Koepke. Unbelievable. The fact that he was able to contribute 3 points in just 7 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time. Again, I was not a huge proponent of adding him to the lineup, but he has certainly risen to the task as of late. Now, of course, we're not going to expect that kind of offensive production from him, but he did have 20 goals, 19 assists for 39 total points last season for the Syracuse Crunch, the AHL affiliate of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the team that drafted him in the 6th round of the 2018 NHL entry draft. He did have 9 games played last season with the Lightning, managed only 2 assists in those 9 games. In fact, in 26 total games with the Lightning, he managed 3 points, what he has already accomplished in 2 games here with the Boston Bruins. Again, not expecting an offensive breakout per se, but to have that fourth line contributing, chipping in is certainly a big thing. And I mentioned Kastelic getting the 2 goals as well. One stat to keep in mind, as I believe Jim Montgomery pointed out after the game last night, back in junior, Kastelic was kind of a sniper. He had in 2018, 2019, 66 games played for the WHL's Calgary Hitmen, a 47-goal season, 77 points. Following season, 38 goals in 58 games. That was in his draft plus 1 year after being selected in the 5th round, 125th overall by the Ottawa Senators. Now, of course, he's known more for his physicality. We've already seen that on full display in this NHL season. He's got the fighting major, but he does have the 2 goals. Clearly, the Bruins saw something in him that they liked in the Linus Ullmark trade, and Kastelic certainly proving to be effective in the early going for the Boston Bruins. And that fourth line, probably should stay together for the time being. Now, there's room on the third line for improvement. Hopefully, Matt Poitras can maybe play tomorrow against the Los Angeles Kings or Monday against the Florida Panthers. Maybe Max Jones gets back in the lineup. Maybe the Bruins finally sign Tyler Johnson and he jumps in there. But the fourth line at the moment is really rolling. Elias Lindholm had the edge over Charlie McAvoy in total ice time last night, leading the team with 23 minutes. McAvoy not far behind at 22:55. Charlie Coyle did a lot of heavy lifting with over 20 minutes of ice time for the Boston Bruins last night. Charlie McAvoy did chip in with a goal. He's now scored in both games this season. And again, we've talked about how in the chase for a Norris Trophy, he does have a very high-end elite overall game, but you need kind of that next level offensive production in order to really be taken seriously as a Norris candidate in today's NHL. It's not, there's no defensive award and then a Bobby Orr award for the best offensive defenseman. It's all taken together. So you need to really be proficient at both ends of the ice. 3 points in 2 games so far for Charlie McAvoy is a really good start. David Pastrnak scored again on 6 shots for the Bruins. He led the way with 6 shots, 10 total attempts. It was Elias Lindholm who was second in that stat with 8 attempts. And he looked to have scored early on in this one, but it was waved off due to a somewhat questionable goaltender interference call. Now, again, the Bruins bucked the trend of being outshot by the opposition. At 5-on-5 last night, they outshot Montreal 22-18. The shot attempts overall were 44-40 in favor of the Bruins. Sorry, that's at 5-on-5. Overall, it was 62-58, and the shots were 29-24 in favor of the Bruins. However, we're talking about these defensive breakdowns and lapses. The Bruins were dominated in the third period by the Montreal Canadiens. The shots were 13-6 for the Canadiens in all situations. The shot attempts were 33-16 for the Canadiens in all situations. Scoring chances were 14-11 in favor of the Canadiens. High danger chances 6-2, and goals were 2-1 in favor of Montreal in the third period. Those are the kind of lapses that cannot happen. We saw time and time again last season how the Bruins gave up goals in the late going to force things to overtime and then lost. They really need to tighten things up there on the back end to avoid that. And thankfully, again, Mark Kastelic scored that sixth goal for the Bruins, because that could have amounted to a much more tense ending to the game after Brendan Gallagher had scored at 15:43 to make it 5-4. 17 seconds later, Kastelic gets that ugly one that the Bruins needed there to seal this one. So shots overall, 29-24 in favor of the Bruins. 2019 shots. Face-offs, we talked about that yesterday coming in. It was 50-50, and even 50-50. The Bruins allowed the Canadiens to score one power play goal on 6 opportunities. The Bruins got one power play goal on 5 opportunities. So the special teams were kind of even there. But the big stat, again, just looking overall at this game, the Bruins, if you look at the complete picture, they came out on top in terms of attempts, in terms of, and attempts again are anytime someone fires the puck at the net with the intent to record a shot. That's called a shot attempt. There's also unblocked shot attempts, and then, of course, shots that hit the net. The Bruins had 29-24, so 54.72% of the shots last night. They led in scoring chances, 40-28. They led in high danger chances, 12-11. But in the third period, they really fell off a cliff. And Montreal, now there's this thing called score effects, where if you're up, and the Bruins were up, 5-2 after the second period, teams have tendencies to sit back, and the team that's down will really press and try to make a comeback. And that's what happened in this one. And the Bruins allowed them to do that by not remaining strong on the puck, making good decisions, some poor turnovers, and it gave Montreal some life when the Bruins really didn't need to do that. So again, the offense got it done from some unlikely contributors. The defense still not super strong. We can give Swayman a bit of a pass for only having 1 or 2 practices and making his first start. Perhaps there were some nerves, not understanding what the reception would be. But at the end of the day, they got the win. And what can we take from this game moving forward? What signals are there and trends that we can pinpoint ahead of a matinee game Saturday against the Los Angeles Kings? We'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Hockey season's in full effect. The NFL is going strong. Basketball is just around the corner, and you can get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, they're giving you a great deal where you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. When you're watching the games, you get a hunch in the middle of it. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Put $5 down on Charlie McAvoy continuing his streak to begin the season. If he scores on Saturday, well, it doesn't even matter, because you just put $5 down and you'll get those $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place that first $5 bet. Get in on the action at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Up next for the Boston Bruins is a pair of afternoon games. Saturday afternoon against the Los Angeles Kings, a team that beat the Buffalo Sabres last night on the strength of a hat trick from Anze Kopitar. And then on Monday, they will host the Florida Panthers, another matinee game because of a holiday in the States. It's also a holiday up here in Canada. Thanksgiving this weekend. Looking forward to spending some time with family there, but I will get an episode up between the Kings and Panthers games just to bring you fully up to speed. What can we take away from last night's game against the Canadiens? Well, they're getting contributions up and down the lineup, which is amazing. If you look at the Bruins stats at the moment, an unlikely character leading the way in points. Cole Koepke, 3 points. The leader is Elias Lindholm, who has 1 goal, 3 assists for 4 points. And one of the stats I forgot to mention, probably my favorite stat line of the night, was a direct assist from Nikita Zadorov on a goal scored by Lindholm. I'm calling that the Flaming Canuck. Obviously, these two guys played together in Calgary, in Vancouver, and it was great to see those acquisitions paying off in a big way on the 3rd goal scored by the Bruins last night. Lindholm, 4 points so far in 2 games, really pacing this team and showing some great chemistry with David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha. So that unit's playing well. The 4th line of Kastelic, Beecher, Koepke is a keeper at the moment. There's still some things to work out in the middle 6. Things haven't quite clicked yet for Brad Marchand, who's still looking for his first goal of the season. He does have an assist. Charlie Coyle, no points through 2 games here. Same with Morgan Geekie. The 3rd line has been a bit of a rotation so far with Max Jones coming in and out. You had Riley Tufte playing last night with Trent Frederick and Justin Brazeau. Brazeau has 1 assist, Frederick with a goal so far, and Tufte was not able to hit the score sheet last night. So they really need to figure out that 3rd line. I think the 2nd line will be okay if they do indeed decide to keep Geekie up there. But I really hope that Matt Poitras is healthy enough to come in and play on Saturday, at least Monday. Maybe we could go with Frederick, who I think is still best suited on the left side, playing with Poitras, Brazeau. And then they decide what to do with Tyler Johnson, maybe bring him into the lineup at some point. But the 4th line is rolling, and he just has to remain patient until that potentially falls apart. I would expect it's possible that Korpisalo could get back in net on Saturday, taking on a team that he played for kind of recently in the Los Angeles Kings. But with the Bruins not having a back-to-back all month, it's going to be tough to find a spot for him to have to come in and play. Maybe they'll give Swayman the day off on Monday to give Korpisalo a chance to redeem himself, but that wouldn't really make sense, seeing as how he was kind of dominated by the Panthers the other night. The Bruins, after that game against Florida, they go on the road to Colorado, Utah, Nashville, 3 games in like 7 days, so it's well spread out. Then no back-to-backs for this team until the end of November when they play Vancouver and the Islanders. So there's a good chance here for Swayman to get a bunch of action coming up. Again, didn't look the sharpest last night, but also wasn't really helped by his teammates the same way that Korpisalo was not. And that's something that this team needs to fix, and soon. Those defensive lapses, keeping things together in the third period, closing games out. They had a better start to this one for sure. But the end, things kind of fell apart, allowed Montreal to have some life when that really didn't need to be the case. And you won't be able to get away with that against the Kings, against the Panthers, against the Avs, even against Utah, who's looking pretty good, against Nashville. These are some tough teams coming up here, and Boston's really going to have to tighten it up. The numbers were great through the first two periods, as you would expect against a team like the Canadiens, but letting them come back like that in the third and not finishing as strong as possible, pretty disappointing, and that leaves some room for concern. So figure out the third line. Hopefully Patrick can be healthy. Get Swayman some more reps here as he gets fully up to speed. Tighten things up defensively. Things improved, but not quite as tight as we'd like them to be. These are things that we need to see moving forward. That's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Thank you for all the feedback on social media and on YouTube. Please do subscribe if you have not already. Next, check out the Locked On NHL Fantasy Podcast. All the expert analysis from Steal and Flip that you need to dominate your league. And it's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Happy Thanksgiving, my American friends. Happy long weekend to my, Canadian friends, I should say. I need some rest. Let's get it. TGIF. Take care, friends.